Hey guys, for today's video, I'll be analyzing Chasca's kit and going over her artifacts, weapons, teams, and constellations to help you reach your full potential, in case you can figure out how to build the easiest to use character in the game. Starting off with her kit, her skill does an emo damage when activated and gives her 80 Nitro points while increasing her speed and interruption resistance, which will be really good for exploring, which we all know is an extremely rare commodity, and it'll especially be good in Natlin, where you can recover Nitro points and switch between other Natlin characters. Now if you tap, you deal a basic burst of normal attack and emo damage, but if you hold, you can aim at the enemies and fire up to 6 shots depending on how long you hold. The shots are considered charge attack damage, and the last 3 can be converted into either pyro, cryo, hydro, or electro bullets randomly, depending on if your party members are any of these elements. This ability is actually quite broken, since it allows you to create powerful elemental reactions from not even needing to constantly apply those elements with your other characters. Now to be fair, the elemental reactions you create can be random depending on your party members' elements, so this ability isn't that reliable if you mess up when team building. For her ultimate, Chasca does a ton of emo damage, then fires 6 shots that are converted into either pyro, hydro, electro, or cryo depending on your party members. This ultimate is pretty decent since it's just a really powerful charge attack. Thus, this ultimate pretty much works exactly like your charge attack. To maximize its damage, you're gonna need to be conscious of your party members' elements so that you can consistently create your desired elemental reactions while still obtaining a ton of amplifying effects from your selected party members. For her talent, it states that there is a 33% chance for the first shell, a 66.7% chance for the second shell, and a 100% chance for the third shell for each character with a corresponding element to cause the shell loaded into the cylinder to be randomly converted into one of the corresponding elemental types, meaning that you're gonna want to use characters that each have one of the corresponding elements so that you can increase the chances of getting additional conversions for her second and first bullets. It also states that for each character with a unique corresponding element type, it'll increase the damage of the shell by 15%, 35%, or 65%, depending on how many unique corresponding element types are on the team, meaning that you're not just going to want to use characters that have one of the corresponding elements, you're going to want to use characters that have a unique corresponding elements from one another, so that you can consistently do a ton of additional damage with her third shots, and potentially her second and first shot as well. For her other talents, it states that when a nearby party member triggers a Nitro burst, Chasca will fire a burning shadow hunt shots at a nearby opponent, dealing Nitro aligned emo damage equal to 150% of her skill, and if the party has characters of any of the corresponding elements, it'll be converted to deal Nitro aligned elemental damage of the corresponding elemental type equal to 150% of the damage dealt by the additional damage Chasca does with her shining shadow hunt shell from her skill. This talent further incentivizes you to have a team full of characters with different corresponding elements, since it does 150% of the damage that Chasca does when you have a team with either a pyro, hydro, cryo, or electro character in it, and it also incentivizes you to use Nitro aligned characters since you can only trigger the shot by using a Nitro aligned ultimate. So how do you actually apply all of this knowledge? Well, you're gonna want to build a team that is filled with characters that each have a different corresponding elements and Nitro aligned characters. Then just spam her charge attacks while aiming at the enemies you want to attack, and that's pretty much it. Chasca is actually one of the most beginner friendly meta DPS characters in the whole game because of her small barrier to entry and small skill ceiling. For her required stats, Chasca is going to want anywhere from 2000 to 2500 attack, 100 to 200 elemental mastery, 100 to 110 energy recharge, 40 to 60% crit rate, and 210 to 240 crit damage. For her artifacts, Chasca is really only going to want to use the Obsidian Codex artifact set because of its insane 40% crit rate boost and 15% damage dealt boost. But if you're looking for alternatives, the Marichu's Hunter set will be slightly worse than the Obsidian Codex when using Chasca with Furina because it'll give her 36% crit rate rather than 40% crit rate, and it'll only give her 15% damage dealt to her charged and normal attacks rather than all of her attacks, meaning that this damage boost won't include her ultimate. The Shimanawa's Reminiscence set will also be viable because it increases her attack by 18% and damage dealt by 50% after using her skill, which is still pretty good, but way worse than her other ideal options, since it too doesn't buff her ultimate damage, and it has some slightly more restrictive conditions as the other sets. Not to mention the amplifying effects just aren't as good. For an alternative, the Viridescence Venereer set would also be good because it sacrifices her personal damage for her team damage, which can definitely be viable with the character character like myriad since she's a nuke DPS, or any really powerful combinations of sub DPS characters. For her main stats, you're gonna want attack percentage over EM for her sands, attack percentage over anemo damage for her goblets, and crit damage or crit rate for her circlet. For her substats, prioritize getting crits, then attack percentage, then elemental mastery, then energy recharge. For her weapons, her signature weapon is going to be her best because it increases her attack by 24%, her charge attack damage by 48%, and her ultimate damage by 24%. For a 5-star alternative, any crit damage or crit rate weapon will be viable, with crit damage being preferable because of the insane amount of crit rate that her 2 best artifact sets already give her. But for some noticeably good 5-star alternatives, the first, Great Magic, will be good because it increases damage dealt by charge attacks by 16% and movement speed by 12%, which can come in handy when trying to run away from a powerful opponent in the endgames if her interruption resistance or shield fails. For another 5-star alternative, the Aqua Simulacra will also be good because it increases her HP by 16%, damage dealt by 20%, and it has 20% more crit damage in its main stat than other crit damage weapons. For a 4-star alternative, the Flower Wreathed Feathers will be viable because it increases charge attack damage by 36% and potentially 48% at max ascension. For another 4-star alternative, the Chainbreaker would also be viable because it gives her up to 28.8% attack at max ascension and 48 elemental mastery. For another 4-star alternative, the Song of Stillness would also be viable because it gives 32% damage dealt when Chasca is healed. For her teams, Chasca would typically want Furina and Bennett on her teams because they are both extremely powerful amplifiers that synergize well and are 2 of the corresponding elements. Not only that, but together they can cause vaporized reactions when Chasca converts her bullets to either Hydro or Pyro. After getting the 2 of them, you're gonna want to use another character that is either a Cryo or Electro character so that you can max out her talents. Some exceptional picks are Escoffier because of her sub DPS and Cryo application being really powerful. Not only that, but she synergizes perfectly with Furina. Silali would also be powerful because she reduces Pyro and Hydro resistances, which will help Chasca's bullets do more Pyro and Hydro damage. Not only that, but she can utilize the Cinder City sets and provide 40% additional damage, while also providing a shield for Chasca that will prevent her from getting interrupted. Cylonen will also be really good, since even though she isn't one of the corresponding elements that will limit a bit of the damage given by Chasca's own kits, she can still provide a ton for the team, considering that she can reduce resistances for 2 elements, which is fine because in this team, a lot of the team's overall damage comes from 2 other elements, thanks to Chasca's converted Pyro and Hydro bullets. Not only that, but she can also use the Cinder City set like Silali and provide healing that synergizes extremely well with Furina. Now if you don't have any of these characters, using Zhongli or Kazuha as a replacement for Cylonen is viable. Using Shenhe, Diona or Layla as an alternative to Escoffier is also viable. Using Mona as an alternative to Furina is viable. Using Changling, Mavuika or C6 Chevreuse as an alternative to Bennett is also viable, and using Auroron, Fischl, Yaimiko, Inefa or Kocho Sara are all also viable, meaning that pretty much any character in the game that is either Pyro, Hydro, Cryo or Electro, or that can reduce a ton of resistances and provide a ton of amplifying effects is going to be viable with Chasca. Still, I would recommend making a team that at least revolves around an elemental reaction, since Bennett and Furina revolved around Vaporize. Making a team that can also apply melts with characters like Changling and Shenhe, or a team that revolves around Lunar Charge with characters like Inefa and Furina would also be crucial at making a team viable. For her Constellations, her C1 states that when triggering the first talent, the second Shadowhunt shell loaded into the cylinder will additionally be converted into a shining Shadowhunt shell as well, which gives you double the additional damage. It also states that the chance to trigger Spirit Binding conversion is increased. If there are party members who meet the elemental conversion type requirements, the chance to trigger Spirit Binding conversion is increased by 33% up to a maximum of 100%, which makes it so that your second shot will always have a guaranteed elemental conversion if you're using 3 characters with a unique corresponding elements, and it'll make it so that using a character like Kazuha, Zhongli or Cylonen is no longer that bad, since you'll still be getting 4 guaranteed shots, and by that logic, you could also exploit this to gain elemental resonance, like using 2 Pyro characters so that you can get more attack. It also states that in addition, Chasca's Nightsoul points and Phlogiston consumption in her Nightsoul's Blessing state is decreased by 30% while out in combat, which will increase her exploration capabilities by a ton, making exploration a lot more fun. Her C2 states that when Chasca uses her skill, she will obtain 1 stack from her first talent. In addition, when the converted bullet from her skill hits opponents, they will deal AoE elemental damage of the corresponding elemental type of the converted bullets equal to 400% of Chasca's Chasca's attack, which is actually pretty insane since it'll increase her viability against AoE situations while also increasing her damage by a substantial amount. For her C4, it states that when the converted bullets from her ultimate hit opponents, they will restore 1.5 elemental energy to Chasca and deal AoE elemental damage of the corresponding elemental type of the converted bullets equal to 400% of Chasca's attack, which is pretty much just the exact same thing as her C2, but for her ultimate, which is only decent since this constellation requires far more investments and only buffs her ultimate rather than her charge attack, which is her main source of damage. For her C6, it states that Chasca's skill charge attack charge time is decreased, and after her first passive sys conversion is triggered for the next 3 seconds, the next time Chasca uses her skill's charge attack, the shots will finish charging instantly and the crit damage of that instance increases by 120%, and this effect can only be triggered every 3 seconds. This constellation is actually quite broken, since not only does it give her 120% crit damage for that instance, but it also increases her DPS by a ton by increasing the speed of her damage by a significant amount. For my pulling recommendations, I would recommend horizontally and vertically investing into Chasca by pulling for Furina, since she is crucial for making insanely powerful teams. After that, I would recommend pulling for her C1 since it gives you a lot of liberty when team building, then her R1 since it is extremely powerful and way better than the other options, and then her C2 since even though it is extremely powerful, the other options are way better. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have anything to say, please leave it down in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.